Hello. Thank you for watching my thoughts. These are my thoughts about the subject of evolution. More specifically, young Earth creationists, I think I could fall into that category, are accused of being anti-science, not scientific, by atheistic evolutionists and theistic evolutionists. No, I just repeated myself, didn't I? And old Earth creationists and gap theorists and day age theorists, believers. But actually, young Earth creationists are very scientifically minded. So we need to start off with some definitions, because the definition of the word matters. It's possible for two people to use the same word and have a completely different meaning. Like when Mormons say we're Christians, we mean believers in Jesus Christ. When less effective people say Mormons aren't Christians, they mean believers in an extremely long list of very specific doctrines and beliefs, and not just believe Jesus Christ. What is science? When I say scientific or science, I mean knowledge gained by the scientific method. The scientific method is you have a hypothesis, you come up with a way to test it. If the test confirms a hypothesis, you have a theory. You keep doing more testing. Some things are just laws. Like gravity. There is gravity. There's no intelligent person saying that there is no such thing as gravity. So there is a law of gravity. Things fall towards an object. Now, science is not a democracy. It is not... Ooh, I just realized I forgot to let my dogs in after I let them out to pee. Be right back. Alright, you can get in. Q, come in! Q, come all the way in. Come all the way in before you get mosquito bites. Alright, they came in quickly. Back to what I was saying. Science is not democracy. Science is not what people who are good at name calling say. Science is not what some guy with a degree says. Science is what we learn by studying and doing tests and observing. Now, some people are called scientists that try to figure out the past. Maybe they're making a really honest effort at it. But we've got to have a different word for that than the word we use to describe the way that we know that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen fused together. And the way that we know about inheritance and genetics. We know about inheritance and genetics because we see it and we can test it sometimes. Mendel did great tests with pea plants to understand dominant and recessive genes. And so that's what science means. Now, what does evolution mean? There are some... let's get into that when I get into this list. When I say creationist, I mean the vast majority. I mean the people like Ken Ham and Kent Hovind and ICR, Institution for Creation Research, that have big followings. I will unsubscribe to anybody on YouTube who I find out is a creationist who denies the scientific facts that I'm going to go over. Ken Ham, Ken Hovind, Eric Hovind, Creation Today, they do not deny these scientific facts. And let's talk about them. Variation within the species. You can have one dog give birth to a lot of different litters. by natural selection or by selective breeding, which the only difference between those two things is whether it is what lets something survive in the wild that decides what breeds, or whether a person deciding what he likes in the animal is what decides what breeds. But the mechanism that causes the changes that both of those things cause work the same and have the same limits. So there is variation in kind. That's why you can selectively breed a big dog, a little dog, a hairless dog, a toothless dog, an ugly dog, a cute dog. You can selectively breed a smarter dog or a dog more like my son's hound. And I love her, but I gotta be honest with her about her. She's not the sharpest pencil in the box. Genetic mutations occur. That's a scientific fact. Virtually nobody. There are billions of people on the earth, so there might be some crackpot somewhere. Yeah, those happen. Natural selection is not denied. In fact, natural selection is something that Bible believers have been believing since before Darwin claimed it does things that it doesn't do. Alright, now, some people point to those things and say, you see, that is evolution. You have to believe evolution. No, there's a big difference between getting different kinds of dogs, as selectively breeding the fish so that its mouth is so small that it would die in the wild. Selectively breeding fish to be bigger and littler or different colors, and they're still fish. And a dog is still a dog that was selectively bred to be a weird dog. You see, there's a limit. Nobody's denying those things. That's science. Some people call that microevolution. We shouldn't call it microevolution, but the evolutionists, the believers in that religion, they want to call that evolution. So we need to have some way to show that we do acknowledge that those things happen, and so that's microevolution. Makes as much sense to call that micro-jumping as it makes to that makes as much sense to call microevolution as it makes sense to call jumping micro-flying. There's a limit. So, an unscientific person denies that. But we don't deny that. Now, dishonest evolutionists, disingenuous evolutionists, they say you have to believe, if you believe the one, you have to believe the other. No, we don't. They are two different. Microevolution and macroevolution are two different. And, I think I covered that one well enough. Now, is it possible that animals differentiate to where they can't breed together? I've seen a specific example claiming that there is a newt or salamander in California that is very similar all the way up and down the state, but the ones in the furthest south cannot breed with the ones in the furthest north part of the state. I'm not denying that. The creationists aren't denying that. But there's still salamanders at both ends of the state. So you have not proven that the salamander can turn into a lizard, a dog, a chicken. There's a limit to what natural selection gets us. And another thing about mutations, the actual scientific fact about mutations is DNA is a scientific fact. We have it. Creationists aren't denying it. Mutations is bad copying of the DNA. A mutation is not a whole new chromosome, a whole new genetic sequence that creates an entire body part. It's just a broken part here and there, a broken copy of the information. So mutations, they can explain some things, and they are true in a scientific fact. But no genetic mutation has been observed, which would make it scientific if it's been observed, Now, artist drawing pictures is not science. No genetic mutation has been observed that creates entire new body parts. So there's a whole new set of DNA, or part of the DNA, to build a whole new body part. And let's see, fossils also, yeah. And so there are fossils in sedimentary rocks. There are dinosaur bones. There are a lot of other kinds of bones too. Nobody is denying that. Back when I was a teenager one day, I said something very foolish that I rescind. Don't need to repeat it now. But the thing I said when I was a teenager that was foolish was because I had a gut feeling that the things I was being told about dinosaurs weren't right. Something was wrong. So denying the entire existence of those things is not the right way to go with that. But the dinosaur bones and the sedimentary rocks do not have labels on them. There's not a death certificate carved on a lead tablet next to the Tyrannosaurus rex or the platysaur or the pterodactyl or a hydrosaur or the other sauropod bones that, says born 2 million BCE, died 2,100,000 BCE. There is no such a thing. How do we know the age of those things? Well, evolutionists make assumptions, and that's how they know the age. Assumptions. There have not been tests done that, show. Like, we can know approximately how, where Niagara Falls started out, or at least if it one time reached all the way to the ocean. When did it reach there? By measuring how much it changes a year, and we measure how far it is to the ocean. But there's no tests like that that's been done on dinosaur bones. They don't do radiocarbon dating on them because that would prove their theory of millions of years wrong when you find radiocarbon in the bones still, because there's a limit to how old radiocarbon or carbon-14 can be before it's completely disintegrated. Evolutionists use circular reasoning about the age of the rocks and the rocks, sedimentary rocks, and the bones. They know how old the rock is because there are certain fossils in the bone that tell them how old it is. And they know how old the fossils are because they're in a certain kind of rock. And how do they know how old those things are? Somebody just said it. Charles Lyell was a lawyer who wrote a book, and that's where some of this comes from, maybe a lot of it. And while we're talking about how old rocks are, radiometric dating measurements. Creationist science are scientific. We do not deny that with a very expensive machine, we can measure how much uranium-35, uranium-37, potassium, argon, helium, hydrogen, helium, thorium, and lead are in rock samples and in volcanic ash samples. But that does not prove the age of those things because evolutionists are assuming purity. Pure uranium-39, pure potassium, 0 helium, and 0 argon. They are assuming purity at the beginning of the life of those rocks. That's a really big assumption to make. You can't know. And these radiometric dating techniques, they give us some very big answers. Differences, of ages. The moon rocks that were brought back in the 60s, they tested as young as 40 million years old and as old as 8 billion. That's a big range. So, don't expect me to believe that you know how old a rock is when the same rock tests that big of a range. I have not heard about them improving their techniques since then. And they still have to assume the purity of the elements. And I've also heard that they tested Mount St. Helens rocks. And we know how old those are. That would be scientific. Science should test. A real scientist should be really trying to find the truth. And they should want their theories to be tested. Well, how can you test a technique of measuring the age of something? Well, if you know how old it is from a more reliable technique, like it happened 20 years, 30 years ago, and people saw it, and people read about it, that we can be certain about. Now we know how old the thing is. Check the rocks. Mount St. Helens erupted 2 billion years ago, according to one of the tests done on the rocks. That proves that you can't trust radiometric dating measurements. Yeah, and so what's the other thing I was thinking about? Similar approach? Yeah. Alright. Creationists do not deny that there are similar body parts between the different animals. That's science, yeah. This bone looks like this, and in this other animal it's got a bone like this. A lot of mammals have 2 bones in the lower part of their arm. Chickens don't, so that's why they make good drumsticks. But the chicken wing has 2 bones in one segment of the wing. If I threw my dogs under an x-ray machine, you'd probably see 2 bones there. The apes have hands like people. Monkeys have hands like people. Mammals have hearts that are similar. Reptiles have hearts that are similar. We've got some similarities between all of our eyes, or most of our eyes, between humans and a lot of the other animals. Does that prove evolution? No, it doesn't. Now, we're not saying that if evolution happened, you wouldn't have similar body parts. Yeah, that's one plausible explanation for the similar body parts. But it's not plausible the more you study and learn about genetic mutations and deoxyribonucleic acid, also known as DNA. Another really plausible explanation for similar body parts. Oh, and the fact that the similar body parts have the same name is because people gave them the same name because they look similar. Not because, evolution came down in the form of a man, and not because evolution is like a thing that talks to people and told the scientists, name it the radium. Just like on the human, give it the same name. It looks similar, so it's got the same name. But a creator would be a great plausible explanation for similar body parts. Bicycles and wheelbarrows and cars and big 18-wheeler trucks, they have wheels around. Now, does that similar body part prove that after 1 million years of a bicycle factory being up and running, random changes to the bicycles turned it into an 18-wheeler? No, that doesn't prove that. That means somebody was thinking about a problem and how to build something to solve that problem, and a round wheel is the best way to solve that problem. And so, our similar body parts is because there's a creator who wanted us to see, and he wanted the deer to see, and the birds to see, and the fish to see, and so he made a way for them all to see. The creator wanted us to be able to do this with our hands, And the creator wanted apes to be able to do this with their hands. And so, the creator used the same design. The creator had already designed either the people or the bats and had a series of bones connected to each other. And he needed to design another creation. And why not use a similar bone structure? That's what a creator could do. That's what we see creators doing on this earth. Those who create the cars, the electronics, the camera that I'm looking at right now. There's a creator who, that camera, it's a Sony brand. Sony, now you owe me $1 million when this thing goes viral for telling them that I used you. There are other brands of cameras that probably have some similar parts. Does that mean those cameras evolved? No. That means there was a designer thinking about it and came up with the same conclusions. And maybe some of that technology is old technology that's public domain. Oh. Telemarketer. Alright, so thank you for watching this video. And now you've got a list of some scientific facts that creationists don't deny, because creationists are not anti-science. Evolutionists are anti-science because we don't see what we should see. There's some evidence against them. The evidence is not building towards the theory of evolution being true. And one little quick thought about theistic evolutionists. They confuse me. And one specific area they confuse me about is Richard Dawkins, in his book The Blind Watchmaker, wrote that things have the appearance of design. He got that thing right. Theistic evolutionists say that Richard Dawkins got wrong the one thing that Richard Dawkins actually got right. It does look designed. Thank you for having the integrity to admit that fact in your book, Richard Dawkins. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.